let's look at the really common data manipulation type of operations that we can do at the command line. And this is a set of stuff that is super common that you're going to do over and over in all kinds of data. You've got it in one form, you want it in another form. And I think I gave you one example of this, creating a JSON file, but let's look at this in a bunch of different ways. The first one we're going to do is, I've got some files in this directory. Let's take a look at just how big is the data. The first thing we can do for how big is the data is we can do ls-l, and we can see that I've got this users file. And the users file looks pretty large there. There are some options we can use to get some grip on it, but users has got a bunch of data in it. So we're going to want to manipulate that and actually pull out a field out of that users.xml file. And XML is a text format. SVG is a special form of it. This is just plain XML. Now, there are tools out there that you can use to get pieces of data, but most of them cost money. Whereas what I'm going to show you is, this is what I do all the time when I want something out of XML, but I don't want to spend money, or I want to make it so that I can repeat this. Now, the first thing is I did ls-l, so I get a long listing, and I go, okay, this file is pretty big, but the question is, how big is it? And there's a tool called word count. Word count has some options. If you just run it, it'll give you 3 numbers. And the 3 numbers that it'll give you is the number of lines, the number of words, and the number of characters in a file. And it turns out that this has got, is that 10 million or 1 million lines? A little bit over 1 million lines. It's this first number is the number of lines. So that is, 10 million lines in it. Now, I can edit that in VI, but it's going to be quicker if I, get some idea of what I'm doing and I do my manipulation in a single pass. So the first thing I want to know is, what does this file look like? And there's a couple of tools. Head gives you the first few lines. And that's pretty ugly, but I can see that I've got rows in here. And it's got an ID, some number, reputation, date, and display name. Now, I'm kind of interested in the display name. Head gives you the first 10 lines. Tail will give you the last few lines. Does it go all the way through with display name? Yeah, it does, and I'm interested in display name. So it's got some other things in here, like this users tag that I really don't care about. And I bet if I do head -1, just to get the first line, it's got a tag at the top that, I don't want that one. Okay. And I look at the first 3 lines, and it goes to row. So I'm interested in the ones that say row, and I'm looking for the field display name. So I'm probably going to want something that gives me just the set of lines that have row. And the first 2 lines I'm not interested in, and the last line, out of probably 10 million. So the first question I want to do is to just get the set of lines that I'm interested in. So I could use grep to find the pattern row. If we do grep, and you notice I put it in quote marks so that it's a string and it's not using that little angle bracket to pipe into grep. But the first thing is the pattern, and I do users, and I do word count. I'm only interested in the number of lines now, so I'm going to give it a -l option. And it's going to take a second on 10 million lines, but I'm going to find the pattern row, and I'm going to do that, and now I don't remember my other number. It should be 3 less than the other number. And by golly, it looks like that is the case. So all the lines in between have row on it. Users is a little bit too big for me to manipulate for fun. So what I want to do is I want to take a piece of users, and I've gotten that 1,000 lines at the beginning that I'd really like to just get into a file. We'll manipulate it in VI, and then we'll turn it into a useful script for manipulating it. So the first thing to do is head, take 1,000 lines. Well, actually what I want to do is I want to take that grep command, and let's take that, and let's take head 1,000 lines. And we'll pick off 1,000 lines after the 2 that we're not interested in. And hopefully we have 1,000 lines. So let's edit that. If I edited the whole file, I could do this, but it would be longer. So let's just edit that. And these lines are long enough that I'm only seeing 3. But you'll notice I've got line numbers turned on over here at the sides, and I have exactly 1,000. So we can play around with what we want to do in here, and then when we get it, what we're after, we'll turn it into a script. So let's go back to the first line, and I'm interested in the display name. Now, if I just got rid of the stuff in front of display name, I'd be closer. So I can do %, and for all the lines in here, because I got rid of the extra stuff, I can do substitute, and I probably want to anchor this at the beginning of the line, .star, which matches any character, and then display name. And I'm really interested in the name, not the tag display name, so let's just take off everything up to display name and get rid of it. And now it looks like we have a quote mark at the beginning. I really want to get rid of the quote mark. So let's take that off. Remove the quote mark. And then I want to get rid of everything after the quote mark to the end of the line. So we'll do quote.star dollar and throw that away. And now I have a list of 1,000 names. Okay. Now, some of them are kind of odd because there's no way to really validate that a person's name is really their name. So, Sneakers O'Toole. Anonymous user. That's a good one for a name. So, some of them are going to be odd, but an awful lot of them, like Jeff Atwood, I bet that's a real name. And Joel Spolsky, I bet that's a real name. In fact, those first few look real, and if we look down a little farther, we see a mix, but we've got a set of names in here we can work with. So that took 2 commands. Now, there is a thing called SED, the stream editor, that we can use to process these things successively. And it also takes regular expressions and substitute commands. So let's go back to our grep, and let's set our data back to where it was. And now that we've got the data where we can work with it, we can say sed minus capital E. There is a lowercase minus e that uses a more primitive form of regular expressions. And we wanted to take from the beginning of the line up through display name equals quote. We want to throw that away. And we want to do another edit on it that takes then substitute, and you notice I'm using single quotes to match my substitute so that I don't so it passes that as a single string. And we want to take quote.star dollar and get rid of that. So we can now pipe our 1,000, and I'm just going to create a temporary file name. I kind of like commas at the beginning of temporary file names. And I did not type sed correctly. So there's this tool sed, and we're going to use the minus capital E option. Now there is a common pitfall on a Macintosh. Your system comes pre-installed with the ancient version of SED. That's the stream editor that doesn't have this option. So you may want to do brew install sed. And if I do this, I'm actually going to have to uninstall and reinstall to demonstrate it. But if you do this, you're going to get the GNU version that has this option. So if I go back here and do uninstall GNU sed, and then we'll just install it again, and it'll tell us what we need to do. Brew is a command line tool for installing utilities on this, and you'll notice that it says that, by golly, in the output, we have to have this in our path if we want to use it. I've already done that, but that would go into your .bashrc or your .zshrc file so that you include this command that you just installed so that you don't have to call it gsed. But now I should be able to use sed with a -E. And what do I want to do? I want to take that file that has... we want to grep and find our grep command, which we did our top 1,000 lines. And then we want to take that 1,000 lines and we want to edit it to get up to display name. So sed, which is a stream editor. And we do... we want to start at the beginning of the line up to display name equals quote, because we had to do that in 2 passes when we used VI, and we just want to replace that with nothing in the first 1,000 lines. And I particularly want to just throw this in a temporary file so that I can look at it. So the first pipe is to send the data in, the second one is to save in a file. The reason I'm using sed is because there's 10 million lines in the eventual file and I want to build this into a script. So if I do head -3 of comma_temp, I see that looks to me like community Jeff Atwood. Looks to me like we're getting the correct names at the beginning of the line. Now, what I want to do is take the end of the line off as well, so I just get the names. So let's go back to this, and I'm just using the history capability to go back to this command. And instead of piping it into a file, what do I want to do? Well, I want to use the sed editor. -E, substitute from the quote, and I want any character up to the end of the line. And get rid of that. And it looks like I have a list of names now. Now, one of the nice things about the command line is I have a history so that I can build this into a script. And I'm going to call this script get names. And what I'm really interested in is I'm going to throw away everything except that little piece. I'm going to tell it that I want it to run it in bash, and I'm going to make it executable. And now if I do, okay, I have something that gets just the names. Now, what I really want is the length of these names. And there is what I consider to be the most useful command in all of VI, and it isn't a VI command. It's the ability in VI to run things through other commands and pipe them. So if